The imperial palace of Orenth floated above the sapphire clouds of the capital world, like a city stolen from a dream. Thousands of towers rose from its silver surface, connected by glowing bridges and transparent transit tubes through which streams of light carried passengers from one district to another. Beneath those towers, millions of machines worked endlessly, maintaining the heart of an empire that stretched across thousands of star systems. At the very center of it all sat Queen Elyra. The most powerful woman in the galaxy stared at a wall-sized holographic display, while three ministers praised her wisdom for the fourth time in 10 minutes. Your Majesty's economic reforms are unparalleled. Your Majesty's military strategy is perfection. Your Majesty's speech yesterday moved entire planets to tears. Elyra remained silent. The ministers exchanged nervous glances. The alien queen looked human in almost every way. She had silver hair that flowed over her shoulders, violet eyes, and graceful features. Only her long, elegant ears revealed that she belonged to one of the oldest alien species in known space. "You may leave," she finally said. The ministers bowed so deeply that one nearly lost his balance. The moment the enormous doors closed, Elyra released a tired sigh. "Do they ever get exhausted?" Her personal security commander frowned. "Who? Your Majesty?" "The people praising me." The commander considered the question seriously. "Not that I have observed." "That's terrifying." The commander, trained to face orbital bombardments without emotion, looked completely unprepared for the response. Elyra stood and walked toward the transparent wall overlooking the endless clouds below. For years, she had ruled the empire. For years, she had received admiration everywhere she went. Yet lately, a question had begun following her. If she removed the crown, would anyone still care, or would they simply walk away? Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. Queen, commander, ruler, symbol. But where was Elyra? The woman herself seemed buried beneath titles. A sudden electronic voice interrupted her thoughts. "Reminder! Your Majesty has 6 diplomatic meetings, 2 military briefings, 3 ceremonies, and 1 mandatory smiling event." Elyra blinked. "One mandatory what? Smiling event. Who scheduled that?" "The Ministry of Public Happiness." "Cancel it." "Request denied." "Public happiness has already been advertised." Elyra stared at the ceiling. Sometimes ruling a galactic empire felt less dangerous than arguing with bureaucrats. Later that evening, she entered a restricted chamber beneath the palace. Only a handful of people knew the room existed. Ancient holographic maps glowed around her as she activated a private terminal. A dangerous idea had been growing in her mind for months. Tonight, she finally committed to it. The terminal displayed a simple question. "Identity masking protocol?" Elyra hesitated, then pressed accept. Dozens of secret files opened. False identification, employment records, biometric alterations, service assignments. Within minutes, an entirely new person existed inside the palace database. Lyra, a junior maid, no titles, no authority, no crown, just an ordinary worker. Elyra looked at the new identity and felt her heart race. For the first time in years, something felt exciting. "Either this is brilliant," she muttered, "or historians are going to laugh at me for centuries." The computer answered immediately. "Statistical probability indicates the second option. Thank you for your support. You are welcome." The next morning, while the empire believed its queen was busy with state affairs, a young maid with silver hair and long ears nervously stepped into the service corridors of the palace. And for the first time in her entire life, Queen Elyra had absolutely no idea what she was doing. By the third day of her new life, Elyra had discovered 2 shocking truths. First, ruling a galactic empire was easier than cleaning one corridor. Second, palace maids were secretly heroes. She stood in a storage room surrounded by cleaning equipment while a maintenance drone projected an instruction manual in front of her face. Step 1. Activate sanitation mode. Elyra pressed a button. A loud alarm immediately began blaring. Warning: biohazard containment initiated. Red lights flooded the room. Metal shutters slammed over the exits. Elyra stared at the machine. "I pressed one button." "Correct. Why did it try to quarantine the building?" "User error. The drone sounded almost judgmental. Several minutes later, after convincing the system that the palace was not under biological attack, she finally escaped the storage room. Unfortunately, her troubles were only beginning. The service districts hidden beneath the luxurious halls of the palace formed an entire city of their own. Cargo drones zipped through the air carrying supplies. Maintenance robots crawled along ceilings. Hundreds of workers hurried through glowing corridors that most nobles never even knew existed. For the first time in years, nobody bowed when Elyra passed. Nobody lowered their gaze. Nobody treated her like a living monument. It felt strangely refreshing and terrifying. One elderly maid handed her a cleaning scanner. "You missed a stain," Elyra blinked. Nobody had spoken to her like that since childhood. "Oh, don't worry. Happens to everyone." The woman pointed at a small mark on the wall. Elyra examined it. "That stain is smaller than a grain of sand." "Exactly. That's why you missed it." The queen spent several seconds questioning every decision that had brought her here. Later that afternoon, she found herself carrying supply containers through one of the maintenance sectors. The corridor stretched for kilometers beneath the palace. Thick energy conduits glowed behind transparent walls. Automated repair arms moved overhead like giant metallic insects. Then something exploded. Not a large explosion, more of a frustrated explosion. A shower of sparks erupted from an open maintenance panel. Someone cursed. The voice was unmistakably human. Elyra turned the corner. A man was half inside a wall. Only his legs were visible. More sparks flew. "Come on," he muttered. "Work with me. I fixed your cousin yesterday." The machine responded by ejecting a cloud of smoke directly into his face. The man stumbled backward, coughing. Elyra couldn't help laughing. He looked up. For a moment, both froze. The human appeared to be around 30 years old. Dark hair, simple work uniform, grease on his hands. Most noticeably, he seemed completely unconcerned by who she was, because as far as he knew, she was nobody important. "Glad someone enjoyed that," he said. Does that happen often?" "Only every day." He pointed accusingly at the machine. "I think this panel hates me personally." The machine emitted a short electronic beep. "See?" the man said. That was sarcasm. Elyra laughed again. The human smiled. For some reason, the simple expression felt more genuine than 1,000 royal compliments. "I'm Daniel," he said. "Lyra." He glanced at her long ears. "You're new. Is it that obvious? You still look optimistic." She laughed despite herself. Daniel returned to the damaged panel. "This section controls environmental regulators. If it fails, half the corridor becomes either a freezer or a volcano." "That sounds dangerous." "Last week it tried both at the same time." "Is that possible?" "I sincerely hope not." A few minutes later, an alert suddenly flashed across the corridor. "Warning, cleaning unit malfunction." Before either could react, a large sanitation robot rolled around the corner. Its scanners locked onto Daniel. Target identified. "Uh-oh," Daniel said. "Why is there trash in the corridor?" "I'm not trash." Commencing collection. The machine accelerated. Daniel immediately ran. The robot chased him. Elyra watched in complete disbelief as one of the palace's maintenance workers sprinted through the corridor while a sanitation unit pursued him with absolute determination. "This is the third time this month," Daniel shouted. For the first time in years, Queen Elyra laughed so hard she nearly dropped the supply container. And without realizing it, she found herself looking forward to seeing Daniel again tomorrow. Over the next week, Daniel became an unexpected part of Elyra's daily routine. Every morning, she told herself she was only passing through the maintenance sectors because her assigned duties required it. Every morning, she somehow ended up near whatever corridor Daniel happened to be working in. The fact that this occurred 7 days in a row was, she assured herself, a coincidence. A very suspicious coincidence. The service levels beneath the palace seemed endless. Entire districts existed below the luxurious upper halls. There were cargo ports, power stations, recycling centers, hydroponic farms, and transit tunnels stretching for hundreds of kilometers. Millions depended on systems they would never see. For the first time, Elyra was witnessing the empire from below instead of above. One afternoon, she found Daniel sitting on a maintenance platform overlooking a massive reactor chamber. The enormous sphere glowed with blue energy. Thousands of drones floated around it like fireflies. Daniel was eating lunch, or at least attempting to. A small repair drone hovered beside him. The drone suddenly stole a piece of food. "Hey!" The drone consumed it. "That was mine." Nutritional analysis complete. "I didn't ask for an analysis." "Adequate." Daniel looked offended. Elyra sat beside him, laughing. "The machine approved your meal. I wanted to eat it, not receive a performance review." The drone drifted away. Mission accomplished. "I think that thing enjoys causing trouble." "Most machines do." Elyra smiled. For several minutes, they sat quietly, watching the glowing reactor. The silence felt comfortable, not awkward, not forced. Comfortable. Something Elyra rarely experienced around people. "So," Daniel said eventually, "where are you from?" The question nearly made her choke. She couldn't exactly answer. "The Imperial Throne Chamber." "A small settlement," she replied carefully. "What kind?" "Very administrative." Daniel looked confused. "Administrative?" "There were many meetings." "That sounds horrible." It was. The answer slipped out before she could stop herself. Daniel laughed. "I knew it." "Knew what?" "No normal person describes their hometown as administrative." Elyra smiled despite herself, dangerously close to the truth. Later that day, Daniel invited her to help inspect a rarely used maintenance route. The corridor descended deep beneath the palace, much deeper than ordinary workers usually traveled. Ancient walls surrounded them. Some sections looked older than the empire itself. Blue lights flickered across forgotten alien symbols carved into the metal. "What is this place?" Elyra asked. Daniel activated a scanner. "Nobody knows exactly." That answer surprised her. She knew almost everything about the palace. Or at least she thought she did. "The records are incomplete," Daniel continued. "Apparently, this section existed before the current structure was expanded. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the surroundings became. Old machines sat abandoned behind sealed doors. Silent monitors displayed languages that no longer existed. Ancient conduits pulsed faintly beneath transparent flooring. The place felt like a forgotten memory, buried beneath centuries. Then, they reached a circular chamber. At its center stood a massive device covered in dust. Daniel examined it. "No idea what this does." Elyra stepped closer. Her eyes widened. She recognized the design. It belonged to a civilization that had vanished thousands of years earlier, one of the first interstellar species. "Interesting," she whispered. Daniel stared at her. "You know what it is?" Elyra froze. For a second, she forgot she was supposed to be a maid. A guess. A very confident guess. An educated guess. Daniel crossed his arms. "You say strange things sometimes, Lyra?" Her stomach tightened. "Do I?" "Last week you corrected a navigation equation that most engineers don't understand." "Oh." "And yesterday you explained quantum gate theory." "Oh." "And now you're examining a machine older than recorded history like you've seen one before." Elyra searched desperately for an explanation. None arrived. Daniel continued staring, then suddenly grinned. "I've figured it out." Panic flashed through her. "You have?" "You're secretly a genius." Relief nearly made her collapse. Before she could answer, the ancient machine suddenly activated. Blue light exploded through the chamber. Energy surged across the walls. Every alarm on Daniel's scanner began screaming simultaneously. They stared at the awakening device, then at each other. Daniel sighed. "You know, every time I meet you, something tries to explode." For some reason, that made Elyra laugh. Yet as the ancient machine continued to awaken beneath the palace, neither of them realized they had just disturbed something that had remained silent for centuries. Blue light poured across the ancient chamber like liquid energy. The machine at the center of the room hummed with growing power. Dust that had rested undisturbed for centuries floated upward as invisible fields awakened throughout the structure. Daniel looked at the scanner in his hand. The scanner looked back with several flashing warnings. Then it simply shut itself off. "I don't like that." Elyra stared at the machine. She liked it even less. Ancient symbols illuminated across its surface. They belonged to the Vorakai, one of the earliest civilizations ever to achieve faster-than-light travel. Their technology had disappeared thousands of years ago. Most surviving examples existed only inside museums. This machine was alive, or at least active, and it definitely should not have been. The floor trembled. A deep vibration echoed through the chamber. Daniel slowly stepped backward. Please tell me that's normal. It isn't, he blinked. You answered that very quickly. Elyra realized her mistake immediately. I mean, probably isn't. Probably. Maybe. That isn't helping. Before either could say more, a beam of blue light projected upward from the machine. A holographic sphere appeared above it. Stars filled the air. Entire galaxies rotated slowly around them. Daniel stared upward. Okay. Either we're witnessing an incredible scientific discovery, the hologram expanded, thousands of star systems appeared, or we're about to accidentally destroy reality. Why are those always the two options? Because reality hates engineers. The hologram suddenly focused on a specific region of space. A cluster of distant systems glowed red. Then strange symbols appeared. The machine was trying to communicate. Unfortunately, neither of them could understand the language. Daniel scratched his head. Can you read that? Elyra hesitated. Actually, she could read fragments of it, not because she was unusually intelligent, because Imperial archives contained records unavailable to almost anyone else in the galaxy. The Queen had spent years studying extinct civilizations. Lyra the Maid definitely should not possess such knowledge. A little, Daniel stared. A little? A very little. You keep saying things that concern me. The hologram shifted again. This time, a sequence of coordinates appeared, then another, each connected to ancient transportation routes spanning vast portions of the galaxy. Daniel's expression changed. Even without understanding the language, he recognized a map when he saw one. Those look important. They are. How important? Elyra considered lying. Instead, she chose a safer answer. The kind of important that usually causes historians to become extremely excited. Daniel groaned. Those people are terrifying. The machine emitted another pulse. Suddenly, dozens of hidden projectors throughout the chamber activated. Ancient walls lit up. Massive diagrams filled the room. Ships, gateways, unknown technologies. One image caught Elyra's attention immediately. A structure floating in deep space. Enormous, ancient, powerful, and marked with warning symbols. Her stomach tightened. Whatever this machine was showing them, it wasn't random. It was leaving a message. One that had waited centuries for someone to find. Then an alarm sounded, not from the machine, from Daniel's communicator. He activated it. A supervisor's face appeared. Daniel, where are you? Maintenance inspection. Why is every sensor in this sector reporting impossible energy readings? Daniel glanced around. The chamber looked like it was hosting a miniature galaxy. Funny story. This is not the time for funny stories. Then you're going to hate this. The communication ended. Daniel sighed. They're sending people. Elyra's heart immediately raced. People could not discover this chamber. Not yet. More importantly, they absolutely could not discover that a palace maid somehow knew more about ancient alien technology than most university professors. The hologram flickered again. A final symbol appeared. Unlike the others, Elyra recognized this one instantly. Her eyes widened. Impossible. The symbol belonged to a forgotten warning recorded in the oldest Imperial archives. A warning associated with vanished fleets and lost worlds. Something that should not exist. Daniel noticed her reaction. What is it? For several seconds she remained silent. Then she forced herself to answer carefully. I think... The machine hummed louder. Blue light flooded the room. I think we just found something much bigger than a broken maintenance panel. And for the first time since beginning her disguise, Queen Elyra felt a shadow of genuine concern creeping into her there. The ancient chamber was silent again. The holograms had vanished. The blue light had faded. Only the enormous machine remained, resting quietly in the center of the room, as if nothing unusual had happened. Daniel stared at it, suspiciously. I don't trust it. Because it activated after sleeping for thousands of years? Because it stopped. Elyra glanced toward him. You trust it less because it became quiet? Exactly. He pointed dramatically at the machine. Machines are dangerous when they're quiet. That's not logical. Neither is a robot chasing me because it thinks I'm garbage. She couldn't argue with that. The two of them quickly left the hidden chamber before the incoming inspection teams arrived. As they climbed through maintenance shafts and service corridors, Elyra's thoughts remained fixed on the symbol she had seen. She knew exactly what it meant, or at least what ancient records suggested. The symbol referred to something called the Horizon Vault, a mysterious installation built by the Vorakai shortly before their disappearance. No one knew whether it truly existed. Most historians considered it a myth, yet the machine beneath the palace had just displayed coordinates connected to it. That was impossible and dangerous. By the time they emerged into the main maintenance district, workers were already discussing unusual energy fluctuations detected throughout the palace. Fortunately, nobody suspected the source. At least not yet. Daniel stretched. Well, we accidentally uncovered a possible civilization-changing discovery. You sound unusually calm. I'm trying something new. What? Panic later. Elyra laughed. That simple laugh surprised her. Lately, she had been laughing more than she had during the previous 5 years combined. The realization lingered in her mind. Later that evening, she found herself walking through one of the palace's elevated gardens. Artificial stars glowed overhead beneath a transparent dome. Exotic alien trees surrounded winding paths. Waterfalls flowed upward instead of down, thanks to localized gravity fields. The garden had always been one of her favorite places. Tonight, she was not here as Queen Elyra. She was simply Lyra, and she was waiting for Daniel. When he finally arrived, carrying a container of food from the workers' cafeteria, she smiled. You brought dinner? I brought an experiment. That sounds concerning. It should. He opened the container. Inside sat several strangely colored pastries. What are those? Nobody knows. That's not reassuring. The cafeteria calls them star cakes. They're glowing. Exactly. Elyra stared. Daniel took a bite. Nothing exploded. Encouraged by this scientific result, she tried one herself. The flavor was surprisingly good. Then her tongue turned blue. Daniel immediately burst out laughing. Elyra glared at him. You knew. Of course. You let me eat it. You looked happy. She tried maintaining her royal dignity, failed completely. Soon both were laughing beneath the artificial stars. For a brief moment, Elyra forgot about hidden machines, ancient mysteries, and imperial responsibilities. Then her communicator vibrated on a private encrypted signal. Only the highest-ranking members of the Empire possessed access to that channel. Her smile disappeared. Daniel noticed immediately. Something wrong? She hesitated. Work. Bad work? Potentially. The message came directly from the Imperial Intelligence Directorate. Unidentified ships detected in border systems. Investigation underway. Elyra's heart sank. Border alerts were rarely good news, especially when combined with the discovery beneath the palace. Someone or something was moving. The timing felt too convenient, too connected. Daniel watched her quietly. You don't have to tell me. She looked up. What? Whatever's bothering you, he offered a small smile. We all carry things we can't talk about. For a second, Elyra couldn't answer. If only he knew how true those words were. She carried an entire empire, a secret identity, and growing feelings she had never expected. As the evening continued, they talked about small things, favorite planets, travel stories, terrible cafeteria food. Neither mentioned the ancient machine. Neither mentioned the warning. Yet both occasionally glanced toward the distant stars visible beyond the dome. Far away, beyond the borders of the Empire, something was beginning to move. And deep beneath the palace, a machine that had slept for centuries had finally awakened. Neither event felt like a coincidence. And for the first time since beginning her month-long disguise, Elyra sensed that the peaceful experiment she had created for herself might soon collide with something far larger than either of them imagined. 3 days passed. The palace continued operating normally on the surface. Beneath that calm exterior, however, strange things were beginning to happen. Sensors across several maintenance sectors reported unexplained energy fluctuations. Ancient systems that had remained dormant for centuries were suddenly activating. Hidden databases were appearing inside secure archives, and every report seemed connected to regions built during the oldest phases of the palace's construction. Daniel had become obsessed. Not officially. Officially, he was investigating routine maintenance issues. Unofficially, he spent every spare moment chasing clues through forgotten corridors. Unfortunately, he kept dragging Elyra with him. I have responsibilities, she protested as they walked through another service tunnel. You literally volunteered. I was manipulated. You said yes. I was professionally manipulated, Daniel grinned. You need better defenses. Elyra rolled her eyes. The truth was she enjoyed these excursions far more than she admitted. As queen, every hour of her life was planned years in advance. As Lyra, she could wander hidden tunnels searching for ancient mysteries. The difference felt liberating. They eventually reached a sealed archive section. A heavy circular door blocked their path. Its surface was covered with symbols identical to those they had seen beneath the palace. Daniel activated his scanner. The device immediately emitted an error tone, then another, then smoke. Daniel stared at it. The scanner stared back. Finally, the screen displayed, "I quit." The device shut down permanently. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then, Elyra burst into laughter. "Did your scanner just resign? It had a difficult career. I've never seen that happen. Neither have I." Daniel picked up the broken scanner. "I respect its honesty." They eventually bypassed the door using older mechanical controls. The archive beyond surprised both of them. Thousands of crystalline memory units filled the chamber. Most were inactive. A few still glowed faintly. Elyra carefully approached one. The moment she touched it, a hologram appeared. Stars flooded the room. Ancient maps unfolded around them. Routes, gateways, coordinates, the same coordinates. The horizon vault, Daniel immediately noticed. There it is again. Elyra nodded. The name remained unspoken between them, yet both understood they were following the same trail. The hologram suddenly changed. This time, a recording appeared. An alien figure materialized, tall, armored, ancient. Its language was unfamiliar, but automatic translation systems hidden within the archive slowly activated. Fragments became understandable. If this message survives, the vault must remain sealed. They are searching. If they return, the recording distorted. Static flooded the chamber. Then everything disappeared. Silence returned. Daniel looked concerned. "Who are they?" "I don't know. Person Saka network estos for Iwanreis. Charkuduanre. Even imperial records contained only fragments. Whatever frightened the Vorakai had frightened an entire civilization. The possibility was unsettling. Suddenly, an alert sounded from Elyra's hidden communicator. Only she could hear it. Her expression immediately changed. Daniel noticed. Again, he always seemed to notice. "You have that look." "What look?" "The look people get right before something goes wrong." She sighed. "I don't have a look." "You absolutely have a look." Elyra checked the encrypted message. Her stomach tightened. Another report from Imperial Intelligence. Several border stations had vanished, not attacked, not damaged, vanished. Entire installations missing without explanation. The timing felt increasingly dangerous. Daniel watched her quietly. "You know," he said, "for someone who claims to be a maid, you spend an awful lot of time worrying about galactic-scale problems." Elyra froze. The comment was clearly a joke, yet it struck dangerously close to reality. Daniel laughed. "I'm kidding." "Good. Mostly." She narrowed her eyes. He grinned. The conversation moved on, but the words lingered. Was he beginning to suspect something? If he was, he hid it remarkably well. As they left the archive, neither noticed a small indicator hidden inside one of the ancient consoles. A signal had activated. A transmission. Something deep within the forgotten systems of the palace had awakened fully. And somewhere far beyond the Empire's borders, that signal was received. The stars outside remained beautiful and peaceful, but unseen forces were already beginning to move toward the heart of the Empire, toward the palace, toward the ancient machine, and toward the queen, who still wore a maid's uniform. The following morning began with alarms, not the ordinary palace alarms that occasionally activated when someone burned food in the cafeteria or accidentally launched cleaning drones into decorative fountains. These alarms shook the entire orbital palace. Red warning lights flooded every corridor. Emergency broadcasts echoed through the structure. Unidentified fleet detected, approaching Imperial space. Daniel sat upright in bed. Well, he muttered, that's probably bad. Several hours later, he stood inside a crowded command center hidden beneath the palace. The discovery of the ancient transmission had finally been connected to the incoming fleet. Records recovered from the Vorakai archives revealed the truth. Thousands of years ago, the Horizon Vault had been created to hide a powerful navigation network capable of reaching regions beyond known space. The signal awakened beneath the palace had acted like a beacon. Someone had been searching for it, and now they had found it. Daniel watched officers rushing between holographic displays. Ships appeared across the projections, dozens, then hundreds, then more. The situation was becoming increasingly serious, yet one question bothered him more than the approaching fleet. Where was Elyra? He hadn't seen her since yesterday. A sudden announcement interrupted his thoughts. All personnel report to designated stations. Her Majesty will address the Empire. Daniel froze. The main display activated. The throne chamber appeared. The entire command center fell silent. Then Queen Elyra entered. Silver hair, violet eyes, long, elegant ears. Daniel stared. His brain stopped functioning. Several pieces of information collided violently inside his head. Lyra, the queen, the impossible knowledge, the mysterious communicator, the suspiciously administrative hometown. Everything suddenly made sense. Oh. The officer beside him glanced over. You look pale. I think my friend might own the galaxy. Moments later, Elyra addressed the Empire. Her voice remained calm, confident, strong. She explained the threat, the ancient signal, the incoming fleet, and the measures being taken. Daniel barely heard any of it. His thoughts remained fixed on one fact. Lyra had been Queen Elyra the entire time. Hours later, the palace entered full defensive readiness. Energy shields surrounded the structure. Warships deployed throughout the system. Meanwhile, deep beneath the palace, Daniel found himself standing once again before the ancient machine. This time, Elyra stood beside him, not as Lyra, not as a maid, as queen. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. So, you really are from an administrative hometown. To her surprise, Elyra laughed, a genuine laugh. The tension shattered instantly. You figured it out. I had clues. You had no clues. I had many clues. The machine nearly exploding doesn't count as a clue. It absolutely counts. Their smiles faded as the machine activated once more. Ancient coordinates appeared, the final sequence, the Horizon Vault itself. Imperial scientists quickly realized the truth. The incoming fleet wasn't attacking the Empire. They were racing toward the vault. Using the recovered coordinates, Imperial forces arrived first. What they found ended the mystery. The vault contained knowledge, not weapons, not super weapons. Knowledge, historical records, scientific discoveries, the preserved legacy of an entire civilization that feared its achievements would vanish forever. The attackers wanted control of that knowledge. Instead, they found an empire ready to defend it. The confrontation ended quickly. Without the advantage of surprise, the hostile fleet surrendered. The crisis passed. Weeks later, peace returned. The palace resumed normal operations. The ancient archives were secured. The Horizon Vault became the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. Yet for Elyra, none of those achievements answered the question that had begun this journey. One evening, she stood beside Daniel in the garden beneath the artificial stars. No crown rested on her head. No guard stood nearby. Just the two of them. I have to ask, she said quietly. Daniel looked over. What? When you thought I was a maid, were you pretending? Pretending what? To like me. The question hung between them. For a moment the queen looked strangely vulnerable, not like a ruler, like a woman waiting for an answer. Daniel smiled. You know what's funny? What? The queen of the galaxy spent a month trying to learn whether people cared about her. Elyra nodded. And? You never understood the important part. She frowned. Which is? I stopped caring whether you were a maid after the first week. She blinked. What? I cared about you. The silence that followed felt warmer than sunlight. For years, Elyra had feared nobody saw the person beneath the crown. Now she finally knew she had been wrong. The Empire still had its queen, but for the first time in her life, Elyra no longer felt trapped inside that role. She had learned how ordinary people lived. She had made real friends. She had found someone who laughed with her, argued with her, and treated her as a person instead of a symbol. Above them, the stars continued shining, and somewhere in the palace, a sanitation robot was probably still searching for Daniel. Some mysteries, after all, were never truly solved.